and welcome to the AutoMate 9 New Task Administrator Orientation Webinar. My name is Donna Horton. I'm an Automation Systems Engineer here at Network Automation, responsible for training, implementation, and product management. I also have Leonard Amabile, who is our Technical Manager and Automation Guru, as my co-host today. Because this is a webinar, your phones are on mute, and you will not be able to ask questions verbally throughout the webinar. However, you can send your questions to the chat window, and we will answer as many questions as we can without compromising the material that we have planned to cover today. We will have a question and answering session at the end of the webinar. So if you like, you can actually save your questions for the end. The objectives for today are to introduce you to the new AutoMate 9 Task Administrator and to familiarize you with some of the new features and changes from older versions of AutoMate 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to go over our agenda, and on the agenda today is we're going to start by looking at the new look in the AutoMate 9 Task Administrator. Then we'll go over some of the new features and locations. We'll do a side-by-side comparison of AutoMate 8 to AutoMate 9, and then we'll look at the User Resource Center for information to follow up with AutoMate, and then we'll also conclude with some upcoming training material that we have planned for our customers with AutoMate 9. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sharing my screen and showing you the new look of AutoMate 9. If you look here in the left-hand panel, this is the new AutoMate 9 Task Administrator. And notice here on the right, I have AutoMate 8 to show you some of the differences that have been ported between the versions. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that in the new AutoMate 9 Task Administrator, we no longer have the menu bar that was previously in AutoMate 8 in the Task Administrator, but we still have all of these features available. All of these options are now on the left-hand panel of the AutoMate Task Administrator. So if you look here, the first thing that I want to point out is the current connection. The current connection actually has a local host that you can use to specify the computer that you are logged onto for the benefit of our customers that are using runtimes for remote computer administration. Okay. Now, someone said that they were having trouble hearing me, so I just moved a little closer to the microphone, so hopefully you can hear me a lot better. Now, let's go ahead and dive into AutoMate 9. In AutoMate 9, notice we have a new Manage Task pane, and this new Manage Task pane contains a lot of options that are no longer in the previous versions of AutoMate. Now, under the current connection, as I said previously, this is where the local host presides, and this is designed for managing AutoMate computers remotely. There's also a folder display here in this left-hand panel that you can use to display a list of all of the folders and computers that you would normally use within AutoMate 8 or previous versions. If I click on the All Computers here, notice I just have the option to collapse or refresh, versus here in AutoMate 8 and previous versions, I would have more options in the drop-down menu. But that is mainly because these options are placed up here in the new Task Administrator. So if I go to the local task, I have the ability to add new managed tasks or new folders, which also is available in previous versions of AutoMate 8. But notice now I can import, I can collapse, I can refresh, or I can actually go to the task properties. So that's one of the new things that is available in AutoMate 9's new Task Administrator. There's also an option here under the Manage Task area that allows you to create tasks, which is in our previous versions of AutoMate. But in AutoMate 9, we have a new look and feel in our task builder, in our task wizard. So if you're using the task wizard to create tasks in AutoMate 9, notice that task wizard has been redesigned here. And I'm just going to create a quick test task just to show you some of the new things that are in the task wizard and some of the old. So if I click on Next, and notice that is the same trigger window, but the trigger window has changed, whereas in AutoMate 8, if you click on, if you start a new task, the Create Steps comes up first, versus AutoMate 9, you have the task wizard first. So I'm just going to click on Next to get through the task wizard. And as I go through the steps, just notice there's just a few new things in regards to creating a task with the task wizard. Now, under the Manage Task area, there's also a list of new things that you can do here. Here you can create a new task, but what's new is we now have an Edit Steps option, whereas you could edit steps here in AutoMate 8. In AutoMate 9, it actually just gives you an option to edit steps. You can deploy tasks to runtimes here from the Manage Task area, and you can also run tasks from the Manage Task area. And this is pretty much the same thing that you can do in AutoMate 8. We also have a new Manage Task properties that are listed here in the top right-hand corner. And under properties, again, you can open up your task properties just by selecting them here, or you can delete a task in the Manage Task area, or create a folder from here. And you do have the option to do a lot of other things like rename your task, import your task, export it, copy, cut and paste, select all of your tasks, refresh your task, or disable your task here in the Manage Task area. I do want to point out something that is new in AutoMate 9, and that's our task properties. We've changed the way we display the task properties between AutoMate 9 and older versions of AutoMate. So if you look here, in this task that in the task properties that I just opened, now we have 3 main categories for task properties versus the tabs that we had in AutoMate 8 and previous versions. Now we have the operations area, the general properties, and the task properties. And each one of these areas contain a set of information that we've grouped together based on commonality. So if you look in your operations, you can now you can just go right and edit your steps. You can edit your triggers as well versus going to the tab or going to the general tab and the edit step tab in AutoMate 8. We also have the details area under general properties, and these details were in previous versions. You had your details area, and that's where you would write your notes. Whereas now in AutoMate 9, the details area gives you information about your task ID, the name of your task, and if your task has been run, and the results of when your task has run, in addition to the location of the task file that was created for this task. So that's one new feature that we have here. We also have the notes area where you can generally just add some information or a note about your task to notify yourself. We also have added to the general properties security, which are some settings that was in, again, our previous versions of AutoMate. They just have a new location. Now, in the task properties, we've grouped together the log-on properties, whereas if you notice when I click on the log-on properties, it does show you how these settings are the same, and again, they're just in a new location. The same thing applies to the on-error. The on-error area is a new location, but it does have the same exact settings. And that applies to all of the rest of the task properties in AutoMate 9. They just have new locations, but it's pretty much the same information. Here's your priority settings and your isolation level. Okay. So that is those are the new changes that are in the task properties of AutoMate 9. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been using these arrows here, and this is something that is also new in AutoMate 9 that can be used to move back and forth throughout your task. We've also added some new views. And if you look at AutoMate 8, we actually had icon, small list, details, and tile options to specify how we wanted to view our task. Whereas in AutoMate 9, you have tiles, icons, lists, and details to specify how you want to view the task in AutoMate 9. Now notice there's a new area here called Groups, which doesn't really replace the Windows area. And the reason that we didn't add the Windows here is because you can add task folders and messages all throughout the new task administrator. But in the groups, you can group your tasks by name. You can group them by type. Notice how when I grouped the task by type, notice all of my managed tasks without any trigger set on them are in this list. And under the managed task folder, this specifies the type of trigger that I have set on this task. So this is a folder watcher trigger, and this is a schedule trigger. So if you have all of your schedule triggers in one place, you can change the view and group them in one area here in the task administrator. I can also view them based on the tasks that are enabled and disabled, or by a specific result or a status. But I'm just going to go back and use the task grouping by type because I do like that view. There is another option that is new to AutoMate 9, and that's the new items displayed list. In AutoMate 9, notice I have a list that tells me I have 3 folders here. I have 4 managed tasks in this list, and now I have 1 task here and one managed task by folder and 1 managed task by schedule. I have a new output pane here, which is similar to the output pane that is in AutoMate 8, but I have more options here. With AutoMate 9, I have the time, the connection, meaning what computer this task is connected to for you customers that are using the AutoMate runtime, if you're remotely managing computers using runtime agents. The connections to those machines would appear here in the output window. And I also have the message. So there's more functionality in the output debug panel on the new task administrator. There's also an executions tab, which is new to AutoMate. And what this executions tab does is it basically shows me or gives me the ability, it shows me what task that I have queued up, and it gives me the ability to stop or restart one of the tasks that is running. So I'm just going to simply run this task called screen capture because I know it has something that's going to pause in here. And notice I have that task in my execution status. So the execution status window just gives me real-time information on my AutoMate tasks that are running. And I still have the window here at the bottom that lets me know when a task is running as well. Let's move on to some of the other new features in the AutoMate 9 Task Administrator. If I go to the calendar here, notice that the calendar between AutoMate 8 and AutoMate 9 has changed considerably. It actually has a new look and feel, but I still have the same information available to me between AutoMate 8 and AutoMate 9. I can still view on the day, the week, or the month. I also can specify if I want to view on a specific task. And if I go to the status, now I can specify if I want to view specific types of tasks, successful tasks, failure tasks, scheduled tasks, or if I just want to view everything that is scheduled to run today. The logs also have a new look and feel between AutoMate 8 and AutoMate 9, and they're also in a new location. So now, notice here in the logs for AutoMate 8, we were using tabs versus AutoMate 9, now they have the tabs on the left-hand panel. I still have the option to export my logs to another format, and I can customize my view based on a specific date and time. The difference here is that under columns, I have the ability to specify what columns that I want to view in my event log. Now let's move to the options. Now the systems options were previously at the top of the menu in AutoMate 8 and older versions. Whereas in AutoMate 9, I have these options in the left-hand panel, and they're grouped in 4 different areas. So let's just start with the preferences. And the preferences are basically the same things that were a lot of the same functionality that was in AutoMate 8, but it's in a couple of different locations. So if I go to the preferences, here is a list of everything that's in the general area of AutoMate 8 and previous versions. Cancel that out. If I go to System Settings, under System Settings, I have the ability to make changes to the main system based on these settings here. So I have the System Preferences, and I also have more system settings. So if you notice here, what's new to AutoMate 9 is we have a new Task Service Preference area. And under the new Task Service Preference area is where you would specify your port for the task service and for HTTP and for TCP/IP. We also have added the default managed task location here, which was previously under the systems area of AutoMate 8 in previous versions. The indicators have been placed here, which are the same indicators that are here in AutoMate 8 and previous versions. We've added the remote administration and just changed the name to clarify exactly what this area is for, which is managing runtime agents or runtime clients for AutoMate and specifying the password here for remote administration. Here we have our log management, and under the log management, we've added a couple of new items here for auditing. If you want to specify another location for your audit log and your system log and your task log, you can specify that information here under the log management, whereas with AutoMate 8, there was just one location to store those files. Now you can be a little bit more selective. We moved the backup and restore functionality from the top menu panel of AutoMate 8 in previous versions. Previously it was up here, and you had 2 ways of selecting a way to backup and restore, whereas now we have just placed that all in one location for your convenience. And you just basically have to specify your archive location and whether you want to backup or restore here under this area. What's new in AutoMate 9 is we have an event monitor user, and that event monitor user can be used to specify how you want AutoMate 9 to handle the event monitor. And I know for you users that have had problems with who's logged on to AutoMate and who's using that event monitor process, rather than going into the registry and modifying that setting, you can come here to the event monitor user and specify it here now with AutoMate 9. Now under the system settings, we have the same information that, again, is available in the systems options. You have your constants, and again, the information is exactly the same. It's just in a new location. You have your SQL connections and your load management, which was in your priority area in AutoMate 8. Notice we've also added a new option to set the maximum total number of tasks that can be queued, and of course that is environment specific. But we do still allow you to set the maximum total number of simultaneously running tasks here under load management versus priorities in AutoMate 8. Here you can specify your SNMP settings or your service user, which is the same service user functionality that was in AutoMate 8 and previous versions. Here you can specify your execution speed, which that was actually in the systems area under the systems option for AutoMate 8 and again previous versions. And of course our holidays, which we enhanced because now we have language support for a lot of different languages. So we've added a couple of new languages to our holiday list to accommodate the new languages that we support with this new version of AutoMate. We've also added a new default properties area, and that default properties area, again, contains a lot of the options that are available in the systems options, but we have just conveniently placed them here and grouped them based on task level automation. So here's your default user that you had a task for in AutoMate 8 and previous versions. Here you have task isolation, which was previously under the systems task isolation area in AutoMate 8 and previous versions. Here you have your email area that you can set up your default email server and the proxy settings if you're using proxies. In addition to your on-task area, which is where you would specify how you want AutoMate to behave if there is a problem with your, if there is an error on your task. What's new to AutoMate 9 is the licensing area. In previous versions of AutoMate, once you would have to enter your license before your 30-day trial expired, and some people did not know exactly if they had licenses or not. Well, with this new licensing feature, you have the ability to just enter the license that you purchased here, and in the new licensing area, AutoMate 9 will let you know exactly how many licenses you have and how many are active by entering them here and applying them here. So that is the new task administrator orientation in a nutshell. At this point, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions from anyone that is on the call. So if you have any questions, please send them through the chat window, and we will be happy to answer the questions. And I'm just going to go over the list of questions that have already been asked, and I'll start asking them as we go along. Now, I see the first question someone asked is, how do they unmute? And just so you know, Max, because this is a webinar, you're automatically muting. You cannot unmute. So if you have a question, you can send the question to the chat window. Can you make, okay. So we did take care of the mute or me sounding muffled. So we've handled that issue, and I hope I am sounding better.
Hi, Donna. This is Leonard. I'm actually going to address some of the questions that are coming through right now that I haven't already addressed through chat. One of the questions I received is, what is the process to upgrade from 8 to 9? With every major version of AutoMate, they are actually created to run side by side. They do not upgrade each other. So in this case, if a customer or user has AutoMate 8 already installed on their machine, they could easily install AutoMate 9 on there without affecting AutoMate 8. You then have the opportunity to migrate each task into AutoMate 9 and test them to make sure everything works before uninstalling or shutting down AutoMate 8. That's a feature we've had for our BPA and AutoMate products since the beginning. Let's see. Another question is, do you have to use the task administrator to create your tasks? You do not have to use the task administrator to create your task. In this process, you mainly want to use the task administrator for managed tasks. This would be if you wanted to add task properties or triggers. You can easily build a task in Task Builder itself or through Notepad if you know the AML language for AutoMate. However, the triggering process would not work until you import it into Task Administrator so you can apply the additional task properties at that time. Okay, give me one moment as I'm trying to look through all the questions that are being sent. Another question you received is, when importing a pre-built task, are the comments removed in version 9 as they were in version 6? All comments that are built in any previous versions of AutoMate should migrate over to the new builds of AutoMate. If you are experiencing an issue with the comments not carrying over, please contact our support department and we'll troubleshoot that. Another question is, can AutoMate 6 tasks migrate to AutoMate 9? We have tested internally AutoMate 6, AutoMate 7, and AutoMate 8 tasks migrating into AutoMate 9. We have not experienced any issues whatsoever. You can use the export functionality of the previous version and import it into the new version. You can also use the backup restore functionality in Task Administrator by running the backup from the old version and then running the restore in AutoMate 9. We'll go ahead and restore all of your tasks, triggers, and properties, as well as constants, SQL connections, and any other settings you had in Task Administrator. Another question, in AutoMate 8, the task that manipulated the GUI using mouse and keyboard interaction would not run unless there was an active console session to the server. Will this still be necessary with AutoMate 9? This ties into one of the other questions I answered by chat. All interactive tasks do require that an active session be running. However, in AutoMate 7 and up, we introduced what's called AMM Auto Start Mode, which is our event monitor setting, which will allow you to configure where the A icon on your sys-tray runs. So you can actually have it now set to console, which is session 0, where AutoMate will go ahead and log in directly at the machine. You can also have it set to what's called first come, first serve. So the first person to log into the machine would get the event monitor. Should that user log off, whoever logged in behind them in succession will also get the event monitor. And then the final setting would be specified user. You can actually assign a specific user that would get the event monitor only. That way, tasks would only run in the remote session for that person that logged in, or if they're logged in directly at the console. Another question is, when I am migrating from AutoMate 6, any options I need to consider? Because we do run side by side, you really can take your time as far as migration. The only thing that I would recommend is that once you do migrate them over is to test each task individually to make sure they function and carry over properly. We did upgrade a lot of the actions from AutoMate 6 to AutoMate 9. They're the same action, but they're no longer in BCL code, they're in .NET. So there are some changes in the back end that may involve you having to do some additional settings, but for the most part, we have found that most of the migrated tasks will work perfectly fine. Another question, I was told that we'd be able to run multiple tasks that interact with different windows on the PC. I'm not sure what information was given regarding that. An interactive task can only run individually. You can't run multiple interactive tasks at the same time because that will interfere. It's basically having more than one user at the workstation at the same time fighting over the same keyboard and mouse. AutoMate works in that same kind of fashion, so you can only interact with one window, one session at one time. One more moment while I still go through the questions here in chat. Another question I got is, how do you send a minor problem that does not necessitate a service ticket? Any interaction with our support department does open a support ticket, but that does not necessarily apply towards your maintenance or support agreements. It's up to the support rep at that time to determine if it's something should count against your agreement. For suggestions or issues within AutoMate itself, those do not count as tickets against your agreement. This is information the support department takes and then processes through our development, QA, and sales teams. The next question, any changes in SQL connection between AutoMate 8 and AutoMate 9? There is no difference between the SQL connection settings in both. We are looking to migrate a future version of AutoMate to be fully .NET compliant, but that's in a future revision. And this may also involve some changes with SQL connection. Another question was, do the steps in Editor load any faster in 9 than it does in 8? As a matter of fact, the task builder in 9 loads up a little bit slower than it does in 8. As we add more and more actions to AutoMate as well as convert them over to .NET, there's a little more overhead when it loads up. It's only on initial load up, but execution, debugging, and everything else is not affected. Another question was, although it can be upgraded side by side with AM8, we will likely set up another VM to migrate to AutoMate 9. Can the same license be used in this transition for both versions and both be running at the same time? Because the AutoMate products come with an evaluation period, in the support department we recommend all customers that want to migrate from one machine to the other and use the one license is to install the trial version, which is a fully functional version of AutoMate, on the destination workstation they want to migrate to. You can then migrate all of your data over, test it, and then once you're satisfied, you can then uninstall the previous version on the other machine and put the license on the destination workstation with no problems. Another question is, what is the relationship between BPA and AutoMate 9? BPA and AutoMate are completely separate products. The biggest difference between both is that AutoMate can be run on individual workstations without the dependence of network connectivity, whereas BPA, when you install it and install remote agents, they're always connected to the server, and there is that network dependence necessary for workflows and tasks to function properly. As well as, obviously, for those that have used BPA, you do have workflow functionality where you can build success and failure arrows and build out a more of a robust process than the linear process in AutoMate. Another question is, do you know if support for the default system settings for email with Exchange versus SMTP be available in a later build of 9? This is something we're actually looking to upgrade as soon as possible. I cannot give an ETA as to when that will be completed. We do have quite a few customers that are asking for that feature to have the same email functionality in the default email server as we do in the send email action, and we are working towards getting those matched as soon as possible. And another question is there a way to schedule the backup that is built into AutoMate Task Administrator? Currently, the backup restore functionality that is built into the GUI interface does not have a way to be scheduled. We do have a sample task online. It may also be in the sample task folder that allows you to run backups of your task as well as settings that you can schedule with the schedule trigger. We are looking into a future version that will have that scheduling capability built in. I am seeing quite a few questions here regarding support issues that customers and users had in previous versions of AutoMate. I won't be able to address all of them here in the webinar, but feel free to send these same questions to support@networkautomation.com, and we will go ahead and verify each one of them as far as what has and hasn't been corrected in this initial release of AutoMate 9. Another question is, are there any is there a new features document available between 8 and 9? I believe there's one online, and I believe if you contact your account manager, they'll be able to provide that information to you. This is something that could definitely be sent to anyone who asks by email. Another question is, can I use AutoMate 9 without BPA server? AutoMate and BPA are two completely separate products, so they are not dependent on one another. You can have both on the same machine, or you can have one on different machines. They do not communicate or connect to one another. Another question is, so if I have the latest BPA server, nothing changes for me because there is AutoMate 9, correct? If you have the latest BPA Server 9, both BPA Server 9 and AutoMate 9, the functionality are mimicked in both outside of the workflow functionality that's built into BPA and the central repository that's built in. So if you're running BPA Server 9 currently, unless AutoMate 9 is something you want to switch over to relieve yourself of the network dependency, that's really the only difference that you would go between one or the other. And as I mentioned before also, if anyone has any service or support questions, I won't be able to address them all here, so please feel free to send these questions to support@networkautomation.com and we'll be able to answer each one of those questions individually. Okay, and that's it for me. I'll go ahead and be handing this back over to Donna, who will go ahead and end the rest of the webinar. I hope my questions were able to assist some of you guys, and if you have any other questions, please send them to support@networkautomation.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard, for helping out with the webinar. For everyone that is still on the phone, we do have a user resource center that is available on the Network Automation website that you can go to find more information on the AutoMate 9 software application. We also will be sending you a survey after the training that you can fill out and provide some feedback to us regarding how the webinar went today. We'll also send out a recording and an AutoMate 9 quick reference guide that you can use to manipulate the software. We have a series of AutoMate 9 training that we're offering over the next 2 months, and if you're interested in some additional training, again, go to the Network Automation website and look at the sessions and register for the online training sessions that best meet your needs. That does conclude the webinar for today, and I want to thank everyone for attending the AutoMate 9 New Task Administrator Orientation webinar. Bye-bye.